is the
seatbelt.
Wow.
145. I think we got shots fired at the outlet mall.
This is the body cam footage of an unnamed police officer, and what you are about to witness comes from the terrifying events of May the 6th, 2023, all seen through his wearable vest camera. And little did he know at the time that fate had randomly given him the opportunity to intercept the plot of one of America's most deeply disturbed incels and extremists. It was 3:36 p.m. on a bright and peaceful spring day. People were shopping, grabbing food with loved ones, and making the most of the comfortable temperature. But that is when, all of a sudden, gunshots rang out from the Allen Outlet Mall, which is found just outside of Allen, Texas. Who the gunman was, or what his motive might be, was entirely unknown to officers. All they knew at the time was that a gunman was at large, and that, unfortunately, he would be successful in claiming multiple fatalities. But let me tell you, that guy picked the wrong time to carry out his evil plans, because that body cam footage belonged to an absolute hero. Now, the deeper that investigators looked into the profile of this perpetrator, the more they realized he had a very dark and deeply disturbing history on the internet. And this is one of the craziest stories that I've covered here, and is right up there with Elliot Rodger and Randy Stair. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, folks, and welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the case of Mauricio Martinez Garcia. Before we begin, and just to let you know that I post up to 2 videos a week here, so please do consider subscribing if you haven't yet. Not only does it help the channel out, but it differentiates me away from those AI channels too. And now with that said, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of Mauricio Garcia. Our story today begins in the northeast of Dallas, Texas. With a population of 1.3 million residents, Dallas is one of the fastest growing cities in North America. It's a commercial and a cultural hub which specializes in defense, financial services, telecommunications, IT, and transportation. Which I have to say is rather fitting for our case today, because the main character in our story was a security officer for several companies in these industries. So, let's get straight into this one. Mauricio Martinez Garcia was born to his mother, Carmen Catalan, on October the 24th, 1989. Born and raised in America, both he and his brother grew up in Texas, attending Bryan Adams High School, found in Dallas. It is worth noting from the outset that Mauricio was quiet and very unremarkable as a child. He did have a few friends, but didn't do anything special and stayed out of trouble in general. And credible sources who grew up with him described him as a quiet and soft-spoken kid who rarely spoke in class. And although Mauricio was known to be socially awkward, he did have several friends and seemed to open up to them quite easily. Back then, it seems like he was apparently a laid-back and non-opinionated child. It's a shame that, moving into his adult years, he would turn into a violent and extreme individual. Moving into adulthood, Maurizio became special for all of the wrong reasons. The older he got, the more isolated he became, and that was especially after failing his only ambition in life, which was the army. So let's talk about that very briefly. It was shortly after graduating from Caseview High School that he enlisted in the army in June of 2008. However, despite wanting to stay there, he would never actually complete his basic training. And that's because only 3 months later, he would be terminated due to concerns over his mental health. Now, it is worth mentioning here that because this was an administrative discharge and, at the time, he was completely innocent, there'd been nothing put onto his criminal record, which, at that moment, was entirely spotless. But this was a massive knock to his confidence, and over the following years, his mental health would worsen. He withdrew from basically all of his friends in real life, and most of his interactions were online. And this is where we see Mauricio in a whole new light, because, moving forward, the now young man would follow a dark, lonely, and violent life. One of the first things to say here is that not everything about Mauricio was terrible. You can tell that he was, in general, just a very lonely guy at the beginning. He loved his music, was a groupie, and often travelled around America to watch his favourite bands, often getting pictures with them whenever they hosted public events. However, despite working out and meeting people at these musical events, Mauricio was very uncomfortable around women. He simply didn't know how to present himself and was overly shy around them. Rumour has it that Mauricio never managed to get laid, though this is actually quite hard to confirm, we'll get to more about that later. What we do know, however, is that he did identify himself as an incel, and this is something that would become very prevalent in the final years of his life. More on that later too. After failing to join the army, Mauricio became a security officer working for several companies over the next several years. One of those companies was Ben E. Keith Foods, where he worked partly as an operator and partly as a safety officer. He would work as a security guard for other companies too, all of which would pay for his firearm training. Now, if they had known that the army rejected him for concerns over his mental health, well, then maybe he wouldn't have received the job or received firearms training. But again, this was not present in the National Instant Background Check system, and as far as the military were concerned, they did everything by the books. His apartment, which was a one-bedroom, one-bathroom motel-style flat, was both tiny and modest. However, it did seem to get the job done and managed to fit all of his gym equipment inside. And so, with that said, Mauricio did manage to keep himself in relatively decent shape throughout the years. But this is where he really began to fall apart. You see, Mauricio may have been isolated, quiet, lonely, and had no real ambitions in life. But rather than try to find purpose and peace, he would instead choose violence. And not only would he lean into the incel movement, but he would also become infatuated with extremist ideologies. This turned him into a very hateful person, and moving forward, he would show his disgust towards women, Jews, and other marginalized groups. And although he was technically Mexican, he identified as a white supremacist. Mauricio maintained an active profile on a Russian social media platform or website known as OK.ru, also known as Odnok Glasniki, and it's under his online alias, named Psychovision5, that we get to look into his dark and terrible nature. While here, he would often leave jarring quotes and often discriminate against women, who he would call baby factories or sandwich makers. As you can see, some of these quotes include, "I don't care about getting a girlfriend anymore. I still want sex, just not a girlfriend, because I don't believe any more women are capable to genuinely love a man. Men aren't entitled to sex. True, I agree, but women are not entitled to safety either. If men cannot be creators of society, they will be destroyers of society. Now it's up to society which role they want us to follow. They have been overprotective stunters, control freak tyrants, prudes who blueballed me at every turn, narcissistic abusers, and because they know it will get a rise out of me, they even annoy me just for the fun of it." It is worth saying that Mauricio had much more vulgar and violent quotes that I could share. But for the sake of the video, I'll stick to what's appropriate and keep us on track. It is also worth noting that he had other accounts online, such as Facebook, Instagram, and even here on YouTube. But due to his violent nature, many of these accounts were either suspended or permanently banned. Many people believe that the reason why he used a Russian OK account was because this website was rarely monitored and that, furthermore, was in a different language. As a result, none of his friends would ever think of finding him here, and so he remained more anonymous. He seemed to use this website as a diary of sorts, posting many pictures and videos of his day-to-day life as he rambled about various extreme ideologies. His writings, which date all the way back to 2014, predominantly revolve around his daily interactions and experiences. These interactions and experiences span a wide range of settings, from dining at restaurants to attending metal concerts, to visiting adult entertainment venues and working in shipping and security companies. Hundreds of his diary entries provide detailed accounts of his many encounters with women, ranging from fast food workers right the way through to hospital nurses. No matter who she was, he would often highlight his apparent attempts to flirt with them, and despite trying to, it is evident that he never had a proper relationship with any of them. Mauricio was consistently angry throughout all of these writings. The best way I can describe it is pure violent nihilism, and all of his writings were made with violent anger. It did seem as if he would become quite fixated on women. For example, in early 2017, he went to the same drive-thru almost every single day to speak to the same woman who was working behind the window. Even from his own writings, it is quite obvious that he was harassing her. However, it does seem that, in his eyes, he unquestioningly believed that she liked him. Some of these entries are, quite honestly, just very disturbing and weird to read. I do kind of feel bad for the guy. You can tell he was very lonely, but also just an extraordinarily strange person. In one of these entries, he almost fell down a flight of stairs, and so one woman grabbed his arm to stop him from falling. As a result, not only does he declare his love for her, but he then openly admits to touching himself after he got home. In another entry, Mauricio talks about his luminance for Crystal, who, quite simply, was just another woman on the end of the phone trying to get him to buy life insurance. He harped on about how much he loved her voice and how kind she sounded, but in reality, she was literally just a sales agent. Mauricio journaled more than 30 pages about the day that he lost his toe, and even then, he was talking about the beautiful nurses who saved him, declaring his love for them in his diary, and even admitting that he screwed up with one of them after he asked her one too many times to show him her face. Again, there is a lot that I can't share here because some of these entries are just outright horrible. He would also talk about his own mental health and how he was 517 from the army. Looking into it, paragraph 517 is the type of discharge that he faced. It says specifically, it provides that a soldier may be separated for physical or mental conditions not amounting to a disability, which interferes with assignment or performance of duty and requires that the diagnosis be so severe that the soldier's ability to function in the military environment is significantly impaired. 517 has nothing to do with this tattoo, by the way, which instead says 10-6. Which instead is something that Mauricio adopted as a personal symbol or signature for himself. Looking into his diaries, the reason why he chose this symbol is because it's the same number as the price tag found on the hat worn by the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. And on the topic of Alice in Wonderland, there are several indications that he may have also been a furry, indicative as he consistently drew a lot of foxes, wolves, and other animals, and also often talked about having a rabbit as an alter ego. Apparently, he would frequently have dreams that he was a chainsaw-wielding rabbit who liked to kill women. He even drew this little creative picture here in his diary. Quite honestly, there are so many strange layers to this person, and I could probably talk about him for hours. But despite his rather bad boy attitude online, Mauricio had a very pristine record in real life. And apart from a speeding ticket which he received in March of 2023, he was essentially clean. But as many of us are starting to realize here, in the background, Mauricio was harboring a lot of violent hatred. For example, on April the 22nd, 2023, he posted on OK to say, "Here's what I think about your diversity, you effing losers." This included a photo of his new tattoos, which included an SS bolt and a swastika. His online posts were also littered with anti-Asian, anti-LGBT, and anti-Semitic tropes. This even included claims that the Jews have engineered society so that men cannot mate with women. It was while researching this case that I found one website in particular seemed to summarize his online activity very succinctly. ADL said, "Overall, Garcia's writings and online postings depict a troubled and quite possibly experiencing mental illness misogynistic loner. One who had few meaningful connections with others, especially women, and whose racism, particularly towards people of Asian and Muslim or Middle Eastern backgrounds, led him on a self-radicalizing path towards white supremacists and neo-Nazi ideas." It was in addition to his online ramblings that Mauricio loved to show off his motel-like home, among many demonstrations of him cleaning and firing his guns at the shooting range. Now, I have no idea why so many incels tend to record tours of their home. Probably because they have nothing better to do, but have you noticed that almost every incel does this? Mauricio managed to record almost 12 minutes of a very mediocre and mildly disturbing apartment. In this video, he showed off his posters of Dharma, Pablo Escobar, half-naked women, The Last Supper, Snoopy, and a rather unpoetic script about shit happening. Anyway, I'll let the video roll for a while here and point out anything noteworthy.
These paintings came with the apartment and they don't come off. I tried taking them off, but dude, these losers are super glued or they're nailed to the wall and they don't come off. Then we got a painting of the Last Supper. Dude, I was gonna buy it when I was already gonna buy it when I was planning on moving out, but I hadn't noticed. But all my aunts and uncles that I visit, they all have they all have it, dude. It's almost like I was gonna do it anyway, but after seeing my relatives, my aunts and uncles' homes, I had to do it now.
As you can see, here's the Dharma poster.
Then we got, dude, the Dahmer poster was expensive as hell. It cost way more than my other posters, even though it's so fucking small. But I had to have it, and I paid more than I would normally. And yeah, so that was like, dude, I think I forgot the website. There was only one website I had it, and I was just like, shit, fine, I'll take it, even though it's cost 3 or 4 times as much.
And moving forward, here is his poster of Pablo Escobar.
Got this poster of Pablo Escobar. And I got this poster. Okay, this one, just like my other poster, this one is a lot bigger than the one I had in my old room. The one in my old room was like 24 by 36, and this one is 50 by 36. I think it's 54 by 36. Dude, this thing is huge. These 2 posters, when I first, I didn't think they were gonna fit, dude. Maybe if these 2 fucking paintings weren't right there, but I actually got them to fit, dude. Barely.
It is also worth noting that his place was absolutely filthy. Items were left on all available surfaces. His toilet wasn't flushed in days. And the floor, well, it was half full of junk. Mauricio also admitted that he only used disposable plates and would often let the trash bags build up.
Yeah, dude. Also, this loser broke down. Fucking little trash can. Dude, I need to take that shit out. Fuck, that's a lot of trash. One of my favorite movies, Sucker Punch.
And of course, you can't define an incel without his very own poster girlfriend. He then ended this video with some very overdramatic music and an image of his profile picture. He made several of these tours, by the way, showing the same thing over and over and over again. In addition to his strange house tours, he would also create hundreds of videos containing footage of him cleaning his firearms, reloading them, modifying them, and training with them at the shooting range. Now, I'm just gonna let a few of these clips play here, but as you can see, he spent many hours doing the same thing.
Which mag was it? This one, yep. Should have loaded it from the other side to see if the pattern will be the same. Oh fuck, I didn't load that shit right and it popped right up. I like the steel because it's super cheap. Fuck, I just lost my... Damn it, this loser. The fucking cat condo made me lose my shit. Now I gotta, let me see. Can you see me? Dude, I'm at the... Man, I don't want to have to take this shit off. Fuck, is the camera even on? Dude, this thing did not get adjusted. Alright, fuck it.
Mauricio was definitely in a never-ending loop of violence, hatred, and isolation. He seemed to do the same thing every single week. That being journal, play with his firearms, visit the same incel and extremist forums online, and talk to himself. And no matter how much he tried to talk to women, well, he never got anywhere with them. In fact, even listening to his personal voicemail makes it quite obvious that we have an incel right here.
Hi, this is Mauricio. If you're the phone company, I already sent the money. If you're my parents, please send money. If you're my financial aid institution, you didn't lend me enough money. If you are my friends, you owe me money. If you're a female, don't worry, I have plenty of money.
Okay, so we are fast approaching the very heavy part of this story, but before we get to the fateful day of May the 6th, 2023, let's take a look at Mauricio's worsening state and the red flags he left behind. Taking a look back at his diary and the behavior observed in his videos, it really doesn't take a trained psychologist to see that he had many issues. I mean, he was lonely, depressed, angry, and even violent, a ticking time bomb at best. But all of this behavior was observed through his diaries, which was private, and his own personal videos, which, again, was private. Right? Well, wrong actually, because everything I've shown you so far was actually available on his OK profile, wide open for the whole world to see. So, why didn't anyone take notice? And was there much in the way of stopping him? Unfortunately, this guy was so much of a loner that nobody paid attention to what he said or posted online. And because this social media website was Russian, there were barely any English speakers on there. I mean, sure, there would have been some users from Russia that definitely would have found his profile online. But then you have to factor in things like the language barrier and cultural differences. So you may be wondering, what were some of his final posts and videos online? Let's take a look at that right now.
Alrighty then. Today I'm gonna be cleaning all my toys because I'm going to the range in like 2 or 3 fucking days. Alright. Let me get those losers out. Come here, you bastard. That's 2. I need 1 more. Whoops, the camera's hitting the fuck. Ah, there it goes again. Shit. Damn it, what'd I do with the other one? I could have sworn it was right here.
As we approached the year 2023, Mauricio had become increasingly violent and divisive. Quite honestly, he wouldn't shut up when it came to discriminating against women and other minorities. It's quite hard to tell what he hated more, to be honest, but his web pages were filled with neo-Nazi and white supremacist content, with hundreds of posts targeting Jews, women and Muslims. Over this time frame, he posted many photos of himself, including pictures of his tattoos, the swastika, the SS lightning bolt, and the Jews' Vault, which is a reference to the Crusades and commonly used by neo-Nazis. Mauricio openly talked about how he fantasized about race wars and the collapse of society. He was an anarchist on top of everything else, to put it bluntly. Mauricio would eventually go as far as praising mass shooters, such as those who committed the 2023 Nashville school shooting, and would even praise King of the Incels, Elliot Rodger, for his 2014 Isla Vista killings. Like I said, he identified himself as an incel. He would often call women foids, which is another derogatory term that combines female and android together. Mauricio didn't believe that he had any chance of finding romance, and instead would find himself admiring Elliot Rodger and even Hitler. And sadly, Mauricio made the ultimate decision to follow these people moving forward, and he was going to conduct his plans in the most callous and calculated way possible. On April the 15th, 2023, which would be 3 weeks before his planned attack, Mauricio travelled to Allen Premium Outlet Mall and took this picture. He then posted it to his OK account, backed up with popularity times and an aerial map. 1 week later, he posted more swastika and SS lightning bolt tattoos onto his profile, directing his belief towards his neo-Nazi and white nationalist ideas. Now, we will talk more about this part in particular later, but on April the 22nd, Mauricio believed that people knew he was planning something awful. In a post, he said, "No matter how well I think I can hide it, there's always someone who sees right through me." The first was this loser. Out of the blue, this guy said, "You look like the type to walk into a crowd and start shooting." Later, I got the urge to watch Rampage. Another time, this crew I worked with at BCW said in a joking way, "If you ever come in here and snap, can you spare me?" I think what gave me away was I was wearing all black. I was out for 2 or 3 days, and when I came back, everyone thought I had killed someone or blanked some chick. And when I was at Texas Fishing Company, this dude said, "Can you warn me when you go postal?" Now, personally, I think the wearing all black thought is quite childish. I mean, I wear black a lot, and I've never had anyone think I was about to go all Elliot Rodger on them. On the night of May the 5th, 2023, Mauricio posted, "The moon's full, losers. See you in the morning." And on the morning of May the 6th, he posted a picture of Death the Wolf from Puss in Boots titled The Walk of the Devil. In his final post, he cited a soundtrack by Resident Evil Biohazard named Go Tell Aunt Rhody That Everybody Is Dead. He also cited a song by Kenosha named You Dug Your Grave, Now Lie in It. And before making his way out of the front door one final time, he scheduled a video to be released after his sick and terrible actions. We'll get back to that one later too. May the 6th, 2023. It was a Saturday, and many of Allen's residents were enjoying the weekend by visiting the Allen Outlet Mall found northeast of Dallas. Plenty of dining and shopping options make it a very relaxed and easy place to be with friends and family. Today was sunny, with a few clouds in the sky, and the time was 3:35 in the afternoon. An officer working for the Allen Police Department was on duty and talking to a mother and two children in one of the outlet's parking lots. It's kind of cliche, but at the time, he was telling all of them to keep safe. But very little did the officer know that he was just about to become part of a crucial component to Mauricio's story, and that was to intercept him. At 35 seconds past 3:35 p.m, the unnamed officer can hear shots firing out from the distance. Concerned by the situation, he immediately notifies his team on the radio before grabbing his rifle.
45, I think we got shots fired at the outlet mall. I got people running.
Precinct 137.
The officer then wastes no time in running towards the shooter while asking all citizens around him to run away from danger. While the officer is approaching the mall, I'd like to show you this map right here. The officer was now approaching the H&M building to where the shots were initially fired, but the gunman was traveling away from the officer, meaning that he had to clear the distance twice as fast. By 3:37 p.m, he is approaching the entrance to H&M, with gunshots notably more apparent and closer. That is when he briefly speaks to two nearby witnesses before then passing injured shoppers.
What? Yes? What you got? Are we a mass shooter? Yeah, we got people coming. 145, I believe we got a mass shooter. I got a magazine on the ground.
Just to the right of the officer's camera here is where Mauricio parked his car. You can see that a witness recorded this portrait video of him getting out of his vehicle. At 15 seconds past 3:38 p.m, he clears the corner of the building before entering the final straight between the shooter Mauricio and himself. And by now, the gunfire is extremely close to him. He slowly but very surely approaches the gunman, and then, at 50 seconds past 3:38 p.m, he engages Mauricio, successfully landing multiple hits on him. Mauricio briefly fires back before then falling to the floor off camera. As he continues to approach him, the officer remains in clear contact with the other officers via the radio, while he slowly but steadily reaches Mauricio, not knowing his condition. And by 3:40 p.m, not even 5 minutes after the first shots were fired, it was finally all over. Mauricio was dead, and this horrible spree was now finished.
I'm by Sunflower's Hut. I'm moving up on him. Who's just behind me? Watch your fire. Watch your fire! I got him down! I think so! I'm not hearing any gunshots! Is he down? God damn, bro! Got him, bro! Now stay your down! Stay your down! You got him?
After approaching his body, officers realized that Mauricio had actually come to the mall very well prepared. For one, he wore a tactical vest which was filled with ammunition, and he also had an AR-15 and 2 additional firearms on his body, with 5 more inside his vehicle. It is also worth noting here that he had an RWDS patch on his vest, which stands for Right Wing Death Squad. Mauricio's autopsy report determined that the cause of his death was a gunshot wound, one which entered through his mouth and then perforated his tiny brain. He had also been shot in his right ear, notably a larger target than his brain, and also in his right arm. Just to make it clear here, but all 3 gunshots were inflicted by the same police officer we saw in that body cam footage. This hero really did act alone. His autopsy report also noted that he had an absent left toe, and highlighted that he had tested positive for caffeine, but was negative for alcohol or any illicit drugs. Tragically, Mauricio was responsible for 8 other deaths. A security guard, an engineer, and a child as young as 3 were among those victims. This included a family of 3, including a father, a mother, and a 3-year-old baby. Another 2 children were murdered, including an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. Both of them were sisters. Now, I would like to talk about these victims more properly, which is why we will go through them towards the end of this video. But for now, it is worth mentioning that most of his victims did not outwardly appear white, therefore highlighting that this could have been a racially motivated attack. 7 others were injured throughout the assault, which included 3 that would go into critical condition. This included the ages as low as 5 and as high as 61. Sources indicated that 2 of those injured included the mother of 2 deceased daughters, and the other child of the Korean family, who now was the sole survivor.
So, this is going to be very short, and I think you understand we can't take any questions. But at 3:36 this afternoon, one of our officers was on an unrelated call at the outlet mall. He heard gunshots, went to the gunshots, engaged the suspect and neutralized the suspect. He also then called for ambulances. We have a multi-agency response helping us work the scene. They helped us evacuate the mall. We've set up reunification areas. I've talked to the governor. The governor has pledged all the support that the state has, so we appreciate that. Hope it goes without saying that our deepest sympathies are with the families of the victims. This is a tragedy. People will be looking for answers, and we're sorry that those families are experiencing that loss.
Upon investigation, officers found 8 firearms on Mauricio's body and inside his vehicle. You can see through these pictures that he had amassed a Glock 48, an SW Bodyguard, a Beretta 92 FS, a Sig Sauer P226, a Benelli M4, a KR Kalashnikov, a Colt Carbine, and an SW MP15. All 8 guns were purchased legally and with his name. Like I said, with no criminal conviction and no noted mental health issues, Mauricio could buy any of them without any issue or hesitation. He also had a mag pouch on his body at the time, which was rammed full of ammunition. But this isn't the only thing that officers would find. It turns out that Mauricio had actually scheduled another video to be released after the shooting. And so later that day, this video was released to the public. And I have to warn you, it is very cringeworthy.
Not quite what you're expecting, huh? Well, that's the video. See ya.
In this extremely edgy video, Mauricio says, "Not quite what you were expecting, huh? Go watch the video, see ya." Now, some believe he says, "Well, that's the video, see ya." But honestly, nobody can tell for sure with that absolutely ridiculous voice filter. And also, if he did mean go watch the video, well, nobody knows which one he is referring to. One day later, and on May the 7th, a vigil was held at 5 PM at the Cottonwood Creek Baptist Church, with Governor Greg Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick in attendance. A makeshift memorial for the victims was erected near the mall, with crosses installed in honor of the deceased by artist Roberto Marquez, who had actually constructed crosses at other mass shooting locations across America. On May the 8th, mall customers were allowed to retrieve their parked vehicles while under escort. Police transferred personal belongings found in the mall to a nearby recreation center for retrieval, and on May the 16th, the large makeshift memorial was dismantled to allow the mall to reopen, which would occur 25 days after the shooting on May the 31st. As the time passed by and the family of those lost were planning to put their loved ones to rest, the world would slowly learn about Mauricio Garcia, his extreme ideologies, and the dark digital footprint which he left behind. People and the authorities soon became aware of his Russian OK profile, and despite OK being a social media platform notorious for its lack of moderation, it looks like this would be a rare exception, because within days, his profile was shut down and deleted. Now, thankfully, both I and several other people know our ways around that, so we can provide more insight to this story. Now, surprisingly, although Mauricio's worldview appeared to have been rooted in bigotry, police could not determine a motive for his attack, and that's because he left no clear or distinct letter or note behind. All we have is the strange post which listed multiple songs and his even stranger video. Quite interestingly, but despite his self-identification as a white supremacist, far-right activists would not embrace him as one of their own or even celebrate him as a martyr. Instead, they distanced themselves. circulating claims that downplayed his white supremacist ties, and instead suggesting that he was involved with the Mexican cartels or South American gangs. Which is quite interesting here because Mauricio was actually a full-fledged American and had never lived in Mexico. The far-right reception he received contrasts sharply with the reception of other white lone wolf attackers. For example, Anders Breivik was openly glorified by segments of the far right, and he seemed to receive far more support from those extremists during his attack. In addition to far-right activists rejecting Mauricio as one of their own and refusing to recognize him as a saint, they would also exploit his mass shooting to spread racist propaganda against the Mexican community. As a result, online discussions quickly erupted into debates. This was mostly around border policies, and some even blaming lenient migration policies for his actions. Again, this was despite his clear alignment with far-right ideologies and him living in the US for his entire life. As those argued online about whether he was far-right or not, there were others that looked into his profile to see if there were any red flags or clues left behind. And like I've said already, there were absolutely plenty, from huge things like his whole entire online profile, right the way down to smaller and more subtle hints. For example, despite it looking like he'd always written it while on some sort of trampoline or bouncy castle, Mauricio always had the SS symbol within his signature, as seen right here. I think many of those who knew Mauricio in real life always knew he was off and that there was something strange about him. I mean, he even talked about it in his diary plenty of times. Some of them would even joke with him about him actually being a killer or a mass killer, but joking about it versus being earnest are two very different things. I think the likelihood is that not only was Mauricio strange, lonely and isolated, but he also had great difficulty in expressing himself in front of other people. And that's why they always believed there was something wrong or off about him. But whether he gave off killer vibes to his friends or not, that is only something they can confirm. However, it was very different when behind closed doors and over a keyboard. Mauricio was violent, divisive, oppressive, angry, and outright evil when hidden behind his screen. And that is where most of our clues and early red flags could be found not only weeks or months, but even years prior. To be honest, I don't know what he was trying to express by naming his journal The Diary of a Psychotic Man-Child. Quite evidently, he was, but whether he was self-aware or just meant this in jest, we will never actually know. Both swastikas and derogatory symbols can be found as far back as the year 2017. I spent hours and hours going through his diary, but even still, as I wrap up my research on this case, I can find even more information which does suggest that he was actually a psychopath. In one entry left behind, Mauricio wrote, "I don't know why, but I get a kick out of watching and hearing about people suffering. Whenever I would hear about losers in some third world country starving to death, I just burst out laughing. I find it funny that some losers live in total dumps and have to rely on UNICEF or some Western country for handouts. I'm a total sadist, and unlike others, I don't feel any remorse. I don't find it funny when I'm on the receiving end." He then fantasizes about the world going to war with itself. He would also make several reaction videos to him watching people getting tortured and other violent things. These videos quickly got shut down and taken off of all Western social media platforms. But with the OK platform being very sparsely moderated, these all remained until several days after the shooting. In all, it is quite evident to see that Mauricio was completely messed up as an individual. As you can imagine, this case would make ripples in the waters of both politics and society. Following the shooting, President Joe Biden urged Congress to pass an assault weapons ban and enact universal background checks legislation. Obviously, this never happened. On the other side, Allen District's representative, Keith Self, would dismiss all calls for gun laws after the shooting. He pointed out that mass shootings of people with mental health issues are the real problem, and that is something that America is yet to take care of. After learning about Mauricio's release from the army, Keith characterized him as exactly the kind of person to keep away from weapons. He also said that his ability to buy guns legally was a loophole that demands to get fixed. This story was one of those tragedies that also managed to find its way onto Twitter or X. For several days, dozens of unfiltered images of the attack were visible all over the platform. And as we know, that is when the lengthy racial discussions around Mauricio and his beliefs began. By the way, several news sites, with Fox News in particular, would screw up by showing several images of a different Mauricio Garcia. This Mauricio was entirely innocent, and then had to respond by filing a lawsuit against them when they failed to issue retractions. Talking about the officer in this case, on June 26, 2023, a grand jury would clear the unnamed officer, saying state law justified the use of force. 2 days later, the Allen Police Department released an edited version of the officer's body cam, which since then has gained tens of millions of views online. Quite understandably, this officer is seen as a national hero. From telling children to wear a seatbelt, to running towards the shooter only 30 seconds later, to then stopping him in his tracks and likely saving dozens of lives. Many people believe that this officer should be given the highest award possible for his heroic efforts, and personally, I have to agree. And also, despite his legendary performance here, he has decided to remain anonymous even to this day. Moving into talking about the victims of today's case, the news is absolutely tragic. A 6-year-old boy who was visiting the mall to get his birthday present would thankfully survive, but his parents, Kyu Song Cho, aged 37, and Cindy Cho, aged 35, along with his 3-year-old brother James Cho, would all sadly die at the hands of Mauricio. An elementary school lost a 2nd grader and a 4th grader. They were both sisters, and their seats remained empty for the rest of the school year. Daniela Mendoza, aged 11, and Sofia Mendoza, aged 8, were mercilessly murdered by this man, and their mother, who survived but was injured, was there to witness the entire thing. Aishwarya Tatakonda, who was aged 27, was an engineer who had made home in Frisco, thousands of miles away from her family in India. At the time of the shooting, she was shopping for an outfit for her birthday. Christian Lacour passed away at the age of 20 while trying to help others during the attack. He was a gentle giant and a graduate of Farmersville High School, and he enjoyed working as a security officer for Allied Security. Elio Rivas was born on October 27, 1990 in Caracas, Venezuela. He moved to America in search of the American dream to help his family, and he always seemed to be smiling and lived with a positive word. Ever since arriving several months prior, he lived on a blow-up air mattress on the living room floor of one of his friend's 1-bedroom apartment. And through the several jobs he had in America, he would send all of his money home for the care of his daughter and his sick mother. None of these victims were racially or politically motivated. They were children, parents, students, and heroes. It is heartbreaking to see that, even with such a brief lens, every single one of them can be recognized as a remarkable and a kind person. And sadly, they were all taken away at the hands of a very sick and violent-minded incel. I hope that all of the families and friends of these victims will find peace in the months and years moving forward. And with that said, that is pretty much the end of the main bulk of the story to Mauricio Garcia. But quite honestly, I could be here for hours talking about everything else that I found. Throughout my research, it is quite obvious that Mauricio had a lot of issues not only with minorities and women, but also himself. But as for the motive of his crime, well, honestly, I really don't know. All I'm going to say is that I don't think it's appropriate for me to determine what his motive could be. But what I will say is he was absolutely filled with hatred, and that is likely one of the main emotions. You know, I find it kind of funny, but he would address his audience and pretty much everyone he disliked as losers. In reality, he probably was the biggest one. But the biggest tragedy behind all of this is that through that hatred, he took the lives of 7 other people, and ruined the lives of dozens of others. Before I go, I'd love to know about your thoughts on this case. Personally, I'm trying to refrain from what I think his motive could be, but I'd love to know what you think. Why do you think Mauricio did it? And while you're in the comment section, please do let me know what you think about this video. I tried to change the structure to this one and switch the content up a little bit. So, what are your thoughts? Would you like to see more of this? As always, please share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below, and I'll try to reply to as many of you as I can. Just a quick reminder, but if you want to help me and the channel out, please do consider subscribing. And also, if you leave a like and a comment, it'll help this video out too. If you'd like early access to my videos or to help the channel directly, then please follow my Patreon. Alternatively, you can find me on social media, most notably my Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of the video today, folks. Thank you so much for watching, I really do appreciate you being here. I'll see you again very soon for another video, but until that moment arrives, remember to look after yourself, look after each other, and of course, stay safe. Thank you, and goodbye.